Yo, what up, guys? What up? What up? Hopefully, y'all guys doing good, man, on this Thursday night. Dude, I know I missed last Thursday, and a lot of that had to do because my lower back, man. Like, dude, it got so tight on me, and I actually had to go to one of the um, like clinics, not a hospital, nothing, but kind of, neighborhood type clinic. And I was there for a while. Then by the time I got out, I had to go get my prescription medicine. Dude, I didn't get home until about 11 p.m. So I did send a tweet out. That's kind of the reason why I missed the live stream. Not trying to miss, right? Trying to keep a schedule. But that's kind of what ended up happening. Dude, I still kind of feel some of that pain. Hasn't went away completely, but I am doing way, way better, man. I'm excited to be here. And again, guys, man, I appreciate it. Those of you who are joining the stream, join in, watching the video, man, I appreciate it. Again, guys, I stream on Twitch and Kick Friday and Sunday nights. I'm going to start introducing more days into that schedule as well. But that's kind of more chill, hang out. We do some gaming. Have been doing some giveaways. I'm going to be doing a giveaway on November 10th when Call 3 comes out. So go check that out, guys. I'm going to give out a copy on November 10th related to that. But nevertheless, guys, here on this channel, obviously we talk tech, programming, database, cloud, things of that nature, guys. So that's the whole purpose of this channel, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. So let's go ahead and get started, guys. Like always, we're going to end up starting the stream off about, I came across this post, and let's take a look at it, man. Let me go ahead and share my screen and let's take a look at it. Boom, there it goes. So ultimately, the question that's being asked here is, are SQL and Python enough to get a job? So pretty much, if you know SQL and if you know Python, is that those two skill sets alone good enough to nail you down a job? And here's a very quick answer. I'm gonna go in more details, but I want to give a very, very quick answer. That especially when the market's very competitive and there's a lot of demand, there's a lot of people out there looking for opportunities. You want to have broader skill sets. You want to be able to bring even more to the table. So right off the bat, I will say, if depending on what the role is, obviously you want to know more than just SQL and Python, right? But nevertheless, though, the answer though at the end of the day is what this user, this person is asking is, if you know SQL and you know Python, can you get a job? And here's the thing: the short answer is yes. You're gonna be limited though on what kind of job you get, but the answer is yes, and it all depends, guys. It all depends on what you're doing. Yo, we got a comment. How you doing? Nice to see you again. But I am at work in my company now. Oh man, I appreciate it. Thanks for joining the stream, man. Thanks for joining the stream. I see that you're at work, but again, man, like always, I do appreciate it for joining the stream. And again, man, everybody, guys, I've been getting a lot of support on my channel. Channel been growing nice and slow. Very appreciative all the support I've been getting. And again, guys, I mentioned before, I am going to be doing a giveaway here on my YouTube channel when we hit 10K subscribers on my channel. And it's 10K is not actually a lot when you think about it, but nevertheless, whenever we hit 10K, I'm going to be giving away a Mac Studio. So those of you who are subscribers to my channel, y'all be able to have a chance to enter into that giveaway. So whenever we hit 10K, guys, I'm going to be giving away a Mac Studio, and appreciate it, all of y'all. So let's kind of talk about this, right? From a very broad level, if you know SQL and you know Python, is that good enough? Even though the short, quick answer is going to be yes, right? Yes, you can get a job if you know SQL and you know Python, but it's very dependent on what kind of job it is too. You got to keep that in mind, because right off the top, I will tell you right now, if it's a job where you're going to be doing web development, the answer most likely going to be no. This is not enough to nail you that job. Maybe SQL and Python would be enough to know like back end when you're doing web development, right? Let's say if it's a full stack role, if you're doing, obviously you're doing some Python API development, Python kicks into that. If you're doing some database modeling on the back end, right, creating databases, things of that nature, obviously that's where SQL comes in, right? Creating views, procedures in database, SQL comes in for that. So again, is it all depends on what role you're doing. But again, a full stack role, you need to learn more than just SQL and Python. You need to learn JavaScript. You need to learn, especially nowadays, depending on the application you're working on, most likely you're going to be dealing with other frameworks, right? You're going to be dealing with TypeScript, most potentially, or at the minimum, you're going to be dealing with a framework like React, Vue, Angular, etc. Right? So you're going to need to know more than just SQL and Python in that case. And in that scenario, honestly, you probably would not get the job if you're trying to get a full stack role. Now let's kind of go back and let's say you're dealing with some more backend. Maybe it's a role, it's a Python developer type role where you're building APIs, and then you also may need to know SQL from the purpose of creating whether it be views or tables and things of that nature. So again, in this scenario, if you know SQL, you know Python, you're actually going to hit a lot of the points that are needed. There's probably a few other things, obviously, besides SQL and Python that you need to know. Like right off the top, right? Very basic. What I like to, the way I like to look at it is there's a few basic things that you need to have in your toolbox to know by default. No matter what programming language you're dealing with. For example, version control. Git is probably one of the most popular ones out there right now. There's more version control platforms, obviously, than Git, but Git is a more popular one. So that's something you just have to know, man. That needs to be part of. You need to be familiar with at least the basic cores aspect of Git, right? So that's one aspect of it. Um, Again, maybe there are just certain things that setting up environments, right? Having a nice workflow with when it comes to your local development environment. As an example, right? Your IDE of choice. Good VS Code is a good, pretty decent, IDE. I like it because it's lightweight and it's quick, and it's very flexible for multiple languages. Is it the best for Python, or is it the best for some other languages? It depends, right? It depends. Maybe, maybe not. Um, but it's very handy, right? And you could build, you need to know how to have your setup. If you're doing Python development as an example, you need to be very familiar of what is your IDE of choice, know how to set everything up, know the in and outs depending on what you're working on. For example, if you're dealing with Docker containers, make sure that you're able to set up your IDE to your Docker container and get all of that set up properly and quick. Things of that nature, right? Even though it seems so minimal, like it shouldn't be a big deal, but it makes a big difference. It really makes a big difference because if you don't know how to do that stuff, you'll spend so much wasted time on something that really shouldn't matter, right? It's like that piece shouldn't really matter, but if you don't know how to do it, it kills so much time and it makes it seem like you don't know what the hell you're doing either. And those are just the little nuances that I feel as being a developer in general, you should just know right off the bat. You should already have an IDE of choice that you're going to use, whether it be PyCharm, VS Code, Sublime Text, things of that nature. Another thing that you should just know, again, the basics. Again, I don't mean you need to be expert, but just the basics when it comes to knowledge. It's terminal, man. You need to know how to use a terminal. I get that a lot of these, VS Code is a good example. You could do a lot of stuff without even touching the terminal, right? You could run your Python code by just hitting the play button and things of that nature, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong on using that, but I strongly, strongly recommend get familiar with the terminal. There are going to be many, many cases, especially if you're going to be remoting into SSHing into a server, configuring that server, cloning your project on that server, deploying, doing all that things of that nature. There's no UI in that case. I can tell you right now, it's all going to be terminal, and it is the fastest way to do it. It is the easiest way to do it if you know how to use terminal. So those are some of the, again, very basic stuff that it doesn't matter. So I mean, kind of emphasizing on this question, SQL and Python, that enough to get a job? Even though I said the short answer is yes, you're gonna be very limited. But I do feel along with that though, there's other stuff that you should know by default, in my opinion. How I said, um, version control, right, is one. Um, terminal, you need to learn terminal. IDE, you need to have already specific IDEs and database management tools as well that you're familiar with, you know, to use. So again, if you're a SQL, if you're going to be dealing with databases, you need to have a database management tool of your choice, like dbeaver, or maybe using SQL Server Management Studio or Table Plus, which for me is one of my favorites. Table Plus, love it. It's not ideal for modeling, but it's very ideal for just viewing data, querying data, maybe creating some tables and views, procedures, things of that nature. But I love it, dude. Um, those are just some of the things that I think by default you should already know and have under your tool belt and be prepared for, right? And if we kind of read on, right, some of the answers that we kind of get back, same thing for them, right? Like, yes, SQL and Python are enough to get a job, but having additional skills and knowledge can certainly improve. And this is the key because this is totally, totally true, man. Even if you're applying for a job that is that it's, let's say, 85 to 90% of what you're going to be working on is going to require your SQL abilities and your Python abilities, right? Python very generic. So Python could be, well, what are you doing in Python, right? Are you building a desktop app? Are you building some APIs? Are you building scripts? Are you building, ETL pipelines? Like the list goes on with Python because it's a general purpose language. It's used for many, many things. The only thing that, I mean, obviously, that I will say it's out of the question, in my opinion, is like gaming, right? I mean, even though Python could do so much, and they try to do some gaming with Python, that's something I would never, never recommend at all. But nevertheless, putting that to the side, Python, it's a general purpose language. It could be used for many things, and people today use it for many, many different things, right? Um, so even though there's a job that you're applying to that 90% require those two skill sets, and you happen to have the Python skill set and the SQL skill set, if you have more to offer besides that too, it is going to help you out. It is going to benefit you, right? It doesn't always have to be strictly programming. Like you got to know JavaScript or another programming language, but it could be you have more to bring. You have DevOps experience, right? You know cloud, so you know AWS, you know Azure, DigitalOcean, etc. But ideally, I would probably say the big two, right? Azure and AWS. You know how to set up databases in the cloud environments, how to spin up virtual machines, deploy maybe Docker containers. The list goes on, right? All of those are benefits, right? That's a value add, regardless of the company is even requiring it to the job. I will tell you that. I will tell you right now. If you were to go apply to a job that maybe requires 90% of your of 90% of what you're going to be doing is going to be SQL and Python, and that's all you know, nothing else. You don't know nothing else. But somebody else applying to the job, but they know SQL and Python as well, just as good as you. But they know AWS. They know like some of the core function, core pieces of AWS, right? Spinning up databasing. Which again, if you know SQL, this is even going a step further of initiating an instance of a database and provisioning it, and you know um, adding the security groups and configuring that aspect of it. Whitelisting IP addresses or and so on, spinning up virtual machines, allowing access to the virtual machine to the database. Like database has uh, database is allowing the virtual machine access to the database for connectivity. Again, things of that nature, right? Maybe um, you know setting up AWS glue jobs, Lambda, creating Lambda functions to do certain specific processes or tasks. Again, these are all value add. Even if there's no need at that moment that the company needs to use that, I could tell you because you have that knowledge, you're probably going to jump in front of the line of candidates of desire being a desirable candidate compared to somebody else because you bring this extra value, even though they may not even need it. But at the moment, for this role, they may not need it. But because you bring that skill set, they could potentially use that skill set in other ways, and ultimately now you become more diverse, right? You're just not somebody that's going to do X and Y because that's what the original role needed. Now it's going to be more like, hey, he could do X and Y because I could do, A, B, and C. So if we need help, he could assist in that area. Or maybe he could help guide and provide insight and so on, right? So again, I totally agree with this answer, right? This is a short answer, but he's right. Like the answer is yes, you can get a job if you know SQL and Python only, but you are going to be limited to what kind of job you could get. And on top of that, you would have some challenges because it all depends on who else is applying. If somebody else is applying that knows SQL and Python and JavaScript and cloud and DevOps and the list goes on and on, yeah, man, they will have a better chance. But how I mentioned, guys, there's a few things that in my mind, that I expect by default you to know if you're applying for a job, right? If you're applying for a job that says a Python developer job, as an example, right? Forget database for now. You're applying for a Python developer job. I'm expecting for you to already know Git. I'm expecting for you not to learn Git on the job. You should know that already, man. And it's not hard to learn. If you know Python or any programming language, right? But if you already know a programming language pretty decent, there's no reason for you to get familiar with Git. There's no reason for you to have your IDE of choice and know how to use it, right? Know how to set it up, know how to make sure your workspace is pointing to the right virtual environment, things of that nature, right? All these things are kind of configured to speed up your workflow, to install packages, as well for auto completion or things, whatever, however you use it, right? Ultimately, I expect you to have basic understanding of terminal, man. Terminal's powerful, dude. Like terminal, I don't know if people realize how powerful the terminal is, but dude, it really, really is powerful when you know how to use it. But when you're new and you're first getting started, you don't have to be a pro. I'm not expecting people to be a pro. That's not the goal. But you need to know how to use it. You need to know how to maneuver, how to kind of give you some basic understanding. You need to be able to know how to SSH into a server, as an example. You need to be able to know how to move files, whether it be locally and upload them to a server, right, through the terminal. You need to be able to know how to create folders, create files in the terminal, move files around in the terminal, because sometimes that's needed. You need to be able to know how to, do some maybe basic upgrading, updating through the terminal, and then be able to know how to start services in the terminal, right? Enable services, restart services, start services, things of that nature. Especially if you're going to be doing like, again, web development, things of that nature, where you're going to be configuring remote servers and so on. Those are things you're going to have to get familiar with. You're going to be starting services through the terminal, restarting, viewing logs through the terminal. As an example, if you're debugging certain things, again, those are some of just basic. The terminal could do way, way more than that, guys. Way, way more than that. But those are just some basic aspects. If you know how to do some of those basic things that I just mentioned, obviously, as more advanced stuff comes up, that requires you to do in the terminal, it become a lot easier because at least you know how to do a lot of these fundamental things in the terminal. That relates to programming, right? Again, there's other things you could do in terminal that maybe doesn't relate to like web development and things of that nature, but nevertheless, those are very what I mentioned, basic stuff that you got to deal with. And becomes very, very handy, and you should know that, guys. Like, you should have a fundamental understanding of how to maneuver the bash terminal, as an example. Um, but yeah, man, that's something that, again, just wanted to kind of share with y'all. Even though, me personally, even though, again, how I mentioned, you can get a job knowing these two, I would recommend knowing more than that, right? Just like the core stuff that I mentioned, terminal, ID setup, get, so on. But also even more than that, guys. Like, expand on it. Get more familiar with it. Like, if you're applying for a web, let's say you're applying for a web development job, but it's a back end job. Okay, focus and kind of learn front end as well. Have some basic understanding of JavaScript that would actually help you out, give you a better opportunity. I feel like. Um, so we got Don in the chat. Hey Don, I work in accounting for a big corporation. We have a SQL data mart that is easily accessible. It is also offer when Python, SQL, and Python has helped me a lot in my role and data. See, I'm gonna say as a data analyst, dude, that's very, very key, man. I have in the past, I have worked at a company where um, we did. I wasn't a part of this team, but I communicated with this team a lot, and this team were analysts. Okay, and I will tell you right now, out of all of those analysts in that team, only one was tech savvy. The other ones, not so much. But, they deal with Excel and they deal with data. So they knew Excel decent to maneuver with the data. But anytime they needed a deal, do some analysis, they had to do pivot tables after pivot tables to summarize. And then from that summary, do another pivot table. And then from that, another pivot table. So sometimes they have Excel files that were massive, 100, megabytes or even more, whatever in size. And then the formulas are running slow because they have like literally 15 different tabs, a pivot table on pivot table on pivot table on pivot table. And it was a big mess, man. Big, big mess. But I recall that one person that was tech savvy, he actually learned, like, he utilized SQL. And I even helped him out on, like, do some Python stuff. So, I've kind of put some scripts together, do some things as well. And I will tell you right now, man, the guess, right? I mean, I guess you don't even have to guess, but the person that actually advanced career right from a career standpoint was that one person that actually was more tech savvy. Um, there is benefits, right? It helped him out to do things, and the reason why he kind of advanced, I think, there's a few reasons, right? For one, the when they were doing certain reports, maybe it took the other, another individual a week to do everything they're doing. It was just a pain in the butt, and then Excel freezes up and locks up. It just added more and more time. Where the other guy that was more tech savvy, eventually, especially on reoccurring reporting and things of that nature, he was able to build stuff, build scripts, automate certain things to kind of, just generate the data set. Um, he was pretty savvy with SQL, helped him out with some SQL stuff. But overall, he was pretty savvy with SQL, like enough where he kind of built some views and things of that nature, and be able to do some summaries and so on, right, from the data mart. And dude, his stuff were like being knocked out like that, and that helped him out, man. Management obviously saw that, like, dude, this person does the same work as they said the other analysts, but he's literally doing it like, in the matter of a few hours or less, while the other guy they're taking the full week to do and stuff like that. So either way, man, let's just say when there was I recall being a layoff during that time that I worked there, he was not affected at all. If anything, got promoted while other people got laid off. So again, I'm a big fan of, using technology, right, to your own benefit. It helps you out, but also it does make you look good, man. It does help you out. Hopefully, if there is layoffs, which I know some companies are kind of having layoffs and all, it doesn't affect you. Maybe it affects somebody else, but not you, right? So um, this is an amazing story. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, man, no problem. I feel you, man. It's frustrating how much they love Excel. Accounting is that time 20. Yeah, dude. I'm telling you, Excel. I don't think Excel ever is ever gonna go away, guys. Like it's never gonna go away. Even though you'd be surprised at how advanced things are, where you could do things now in like other data sets, obviously, and like database as an example, right? Especially when we're dealing with data. But man, Excel just one of those deals where I feel like there's a lot of people that need to deal with data to do like maybe some basic reporting, and they love Excel. Even if the data's in a database, they just rather, well, let me pull the Excel data in Excel, and then I'll do all the hard work in Excel. And obviously, man, if they knew SQL, dude, it would be way, way different. They'll be doing all the hard work in SQL and then pulling the final results out in Excel to maybe just to, present it pretty much. But yeah, man, that's something that I always wonder, man, like, man, Excel probably would die. But the more I feel like I have worked with corporations, um, I have seen that Excel, honestly, I feel like Excel hasn't even grown. And because of that, like, dude, I don't feel Excel is gonna ever gonna go away anytime soon. But you're limited, right? Even the people that I have dealt with that are non-tech savvy people, they got limited from to some extent where the data set got too big, and you just couldn't do it in Excel no more. Um, one of I recall one of those teams that I was mentioning, the analysts, their data set that they had, they were pulling like year to date data. So obviously, as you get toward the end of the year, like right now, we're in October, you start getting to November, December, you're pulling pretty much almost 12 months worth of data, and the data was too big. It was over a million rows, and Excel cannot handle a million plus rows. I think the limit for Excel is like a million and a few hundred or something like that rows, right? It's very limited. So obviously they could not pull it in no more because it just doesn't allow it. So that's kind of where I recall we had to build some stuff to kind of do a lot of their calculations that they're doing in SQL. So then they could just pull out the summarized data. But again, that was the what I want to call, they were forced, like they were forced to move their data set, to, let me rephrase it. They were forced to have all the calculations done in the database. They didn't want to. We actually, I recall having a meeting. We're like, hey, like all of the work that you're doing, um, you know, that could be done in the database, and also, and as well, it'll help out some of the issues you're having, like where Excel crashes and things of that nature, right? You don't have to deal with that kind of stuff. Um, but you'd be surprised, dude. So what happened in that case? What they end up doing to solve for the whole Excel issue, right? The Excel crashing. What the company did was they said, hey, you know what, Excel crashing. So you know what we need to do? We need to get everybody, switch them from laptops over to workstations. And because now they have workstations, they have, again, Xeon processors, and it was like 32 gigs of RAM, I believe. Those workstations, it came with like 32 gigs of RAM. So that was like the solve for it, which I thought, in my mind, when you think about it, it's kind of crazy, dude. Like, dude, you would think the solve would be, we need to move all these calculations and have the database do that for us, because the database could calculate that, right? It has the power to do so. Instead of, hey, let's get everybody. I want to say there were like $3,500 workstations, and they got everybody in the. It was probably like 10 maybe. So when you think about it, $35,000, dude. So hey, let's get everybody workstations, $35,000 worth of workstations, and obviously Excel didn't crash, but the issue was it really didn't speed up the process, and I think a lot of that has to do with Excel, because the way Excel uses the cores, it's not utilizing all the cores in the CPU, even though it had a Xeon processor, so it had a lot of cores to throw at the job. It wasn't utilizing all of the cores. It was only utilizing, I believe, one core, two threads. So obviously you were still limited on speed, but it didn't crash. And again, that was more so related to the RAM. There was enough RAM to handle all of the data memory. So, but either way, that was just kind of, I thought it was kind of funny on the solution. But again, that's all that had changed, dude. I actually talked to that company. That was some years back that I worked for that company. I talked to people in the company, and yeah, man, things have changed big time. A lot of things have been moved over to data warehouse and being calculated properly, and they're utilizing other tools like Power BI, things of that nature for reporting and dashboarding. So yeah, man, it seemed like they finally came up to the times, but it actually it took some time. Um, at Excel VBA, my yeah, dude, I have seen that, man. I have worked on some projects, same company that I mentioned about, and everything was the stuff that was more complicated, was done in VBA, and that was like a whole other department though. It wasn't the same department I was talking about. This was a different department, because they did have somebody that was tech savvy, but for them they wanted to do everything in VBA, which I don't get either because they could have done it in SQL in my opinion, but either way, yeah, that was a big mess. Hey, I still like Excel to load as data frames in Panda. Now even Python is going to be incorporated. So yeah, exactly. I am going to be doing some testing over that, the whole Python integrated in Excel. Um, so I'm going to be playing around with that. So I'll be making some videos related to that coming soon. Um, Mostly for Panda, data frame, data analysis. Yep, dude. I mean, that's like the quick way to get started with data, man. And I use that all the time. And I use Panda load any kind of data, right? Obviously Excel, but it could be CSV, Parquet, etc. Right? There's many other data files. So and you do and when you know that like the basics, right? You don't have to be an expert, but when you know like the basic understanding of like let's say using Panda, data frame, and kind of how to do certain things within that, dude, it becomes very very powerful. You can do things quick, and obviously because you could save your script, you could go ahead and go back to maybe whether it be like weekly monthly reporting or things of that nature, easily load up a new data set, rerun the process, and bam, be good to go. So so yeah. Um, so the next topic, guy, that I'm gonna talk in this stream is going to be different file types that I wanted to share with y'all. So, for example, and let me just kind of go through this to. I don't know why my mouse, dude. It must be me streaming because I noticed, man, my mouse is very buggy when I'm streaming for some reason. So one of the things I wanted to kind of share was different file types, right? And I'm kind of sharing some of the popular ones, and these are some of the ones that I actually deal with on a pretty frequent basis. But obviously, you have CSV. We just talked about right now Excel. We have, dude, what's up with my keyboard? Parquet. We have JSON, XML. Then the final one, and this is the one that it may be kind of, I think a lot of people are not that familiar with. And even though a lot of people are not that familiar with EDI X12, it is very, very powerful, man. Like, let me rephrase it. It's very, very popular. It is very popular in the logistics world, whether it be Amazon, whether like Amazon Vendor Central, they use EDI X12. I think it's like version 4010. Walmart, so people that ship to Walmart, like companies, right? Let's say if you have a product, you have T-shirts or whatever, and you're sending these products to Walmart, you have to give them a arrival notice that this is what's coming to Walmart, their fulfillment center. Well, they need a file that tells them what it is, and well, that file type is normally their standard is EDI X12, right? And so again, it's very very popular, man. You'd be surprised. Like it's one of those file types that it is used globally, all over the world. A lot of different manufacturers, trade partners that are sharing data with each other. They use EDI X12. You see all the big players, how I mentioned, right? Your Walmart, your CVS, your Amazon, the list goes on and on. That's what they use. Carriers, um, to get carrier statting, whether it be airlines or whatever, they use EDI X12. So I'm not saying that some of these big players don't use other file types, because some of them I have seen some that do, and mainly it's XML. But dude, this is like extremely utilized worldwide. But it's one of those data types. Unless you're in that world and unless you deal with this file type, most people do not have a clue what it is. It's very foreign to them, very new, unless you're exposed to it. The file types that most people are familiar with, obviously, probably CSV, Excel, and then after these two, I'm gonna say it's probably gonna be JSON, XML, and then from there down the list is going to be your Parquet. Because again, not everybody's familiar with Parquet. Now I'll explain a little bit what that file is, how does it look, and so forth. And then we finish it off with EDI X12. There are more file types than this. These are the more, what I want to say, common file types that you're going to be dealing with, right? Without a doubt, these file types are probably a good 90 plus percentile of that's out there that you would be handling in some way or form. And let's start off with some of the basics, right? Like CSV. So those of you who are new, who are not familiar with, well, what is a CSV file and so on, I'm going to show you what that looks like. So a CSV file, it's literally a text file. That's all it is, guys. Nothing else. It's a text file. Let me make sure. I'm trying to adjust some things over here on my side. All right, cool. So a CSV is literally a text file. So it's literally raw text. There's nothing special to it. It's raw text. So if we, let me go ahead and make this a bit smaller. Oops. And when you talk about CSV file in general, normally it's a comma delimited file, but you do have other common delimiters that you could use, like pipe is another one. When by pipe, I'm literally mean like the character, pipe like that. That's pipe. A tab. So if I click on tab on my keyboard, as you could tell, there's a lot of spaces. But again, it's not a space. It's actually a tab special character. You can't really see it. But there is a value behind the scenes. So if I were to try to do find and I do /T and I hit find, I need to do, there it goes. Special character, see how it's highlighted? This actually represents this, right? Now it doesn't show this, but because the editor knows that it really represents this. So those are just kind of, again, more hidden special characters, but that represents, like for example, a new line. If I were to do /n, see how at the end of each line we have a finding, right? I could find all of these. At the end of the line, /n represents a new line hidden special character, you want to call it, right? So you don't see it, like we don't see it when we open up the editor, but it's there and it's kind of hidden, but you could find it, right? If we need to search for it, we can find it by typing in the specific /T for tab, /n for a new line, etc. But either way, the main goal, right? The main thing here, what I'm trying to share with y'all is CSV is a raw text file. You can open it up in any text editor, notepad, whatever it is, and you kind of view the raw text of it. You can kind of see, and normally the structure of it is, you have the first value, then a comma. The first row most of the time would be your header, yeah, right, your row header for your file, and obviously this value, this column you want to call it, right, because it's separated by a comma, it belongs to this value here. And then you have a comma, and then you have what's called completion status, and then that will be this value, right? Because it's, again, it follows the same, it's right after the first comma, and that's how you know these two go together. Obviously, you could open this file up, and you want to view it a little bit more easier, like something like, let's say, Excel. So we could, if we open it up in Excel, Excel would, put them in the right placements, right, in the right columns. So at least visually you could see it. The problem though, you got to keep in mind when you open up CSV files in Excel, sometimes it converts things for you automatically, which means if you save it, like save your CSV, could you make a change and you save it, um, it could screw up the raw data that you had. And I'm trying to find a good example. Like, I guess let me close out of it. I'm gonna hit don't save. A good example would be, let's say this last value here started with a 0, right? It starts with a 0. So now let me go ahead. I'm gonna save it. And now let me open this up in Excel. Let's see, where is it at? There it goes. So if I open this up, see how it doesn't have the 0 no more, right? The 0 went away, but it has it in the raw data because I added it. And the reason why it's doing this is because Excel is trying to determine what data type this is, and it's automatically saying, oh, this must be a number. So if it's a number, numbers don't start with the number 0, right? So that's why it takes off the 0. So you got to be careful with little stuff like that, which is why if I'm going to be dealing, especially modifying, if I'm only viewing real quick, maybe I'll open up Excel, but I make sure not to save. If I'm going to be modifying certain things, I don't really like to bring it in Excel. And the only time that I would bring it in Excel is if I'm going to be doing something more like, let me do this real quick. If I'm going to do a new page, a new spreadsheet, and then inside Excel, I'm going to do a data import from text CSV. And then from here, I'll be able to go ahead and import that in. So let me go ahead and find that file. I actually have it on my network, my home NAS system network. So let me go ahead and connect to that. There it goes. So whenever you select your file, it kind of shows everything, right? And see how now we can see that 0 in the front, but you got to make sure that this, trying to think. Then if I hit load, or we could hit transform data, right? We have transform data, which in this case I would make sure that this is, see how this is the 1, 2, 3 because it's a number data type. I want to make sure this is a text, and it is because it has that ABC. And you could tell right here it says data type text. So we would actually be fine to import this in. So I want to do close and load. So now I should go ahead and load that data. And now you take a look at it, there is a 0 in front of that value, right? And because it is actually loading it in properly as a text value compared to when you just open it up in Excel. Excel tries to auto determine it, and most of the time it's it's going to be wrong in these cases. So that's just something to keep in mind, man, when you're dealing with CSV, like raw data. It's fine to open up Excel, but you got to be careful on making changes and saving it back, because you may have little issues like that. So let me go ahead and close out of that. Don't save. So again, raw text, that's what a CSV pretty much file is. Obviously, Excel, keep in mind, Excel is not raw text at all, right? But Excel, what it really is, and let me try to share this with y'all. Let me find an Excel file to try to make sure that y'all kind of understand this. I'm gonna copy this. I guess let me create a new folder here. All right, cool. So let me show you. So I have this Excel file here, right? You can see I have this Excel file. Keep in mind though, if I try to let's say drag and drop this in a notepad, right? You're gonna see this. And because this is a file that's not raw text, so you got to keep that in mind, right? It's an object, and because of that, you're gonna get all the weird, numbers that you see here, right? Values. So it's not something that could be opened up raw like in a text editor. So of course the question becomes, what is Excel? So obviously, short answer, Excel is a file type that Excel applications or like Google Sheets and so on can open. All right, so that makes sense. So I mean, you need an application like that, like a Google Sheets or Microsoft Excel, to open up the sheets. But at the same time, what are they though? Right, right. At the end of the day, what the hell is it? And what they really are, right? At the short answer is going to be, these are actually zip files. So if I change this, you know what? I need to show. Why is this not showing my? Let me see. I needed to show. Let me see. View. I needed to show with file extension. There we go. That's what I was looking for. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to remove the .xls extension. I'm going to replace it with zip. So in reality, an Excel file, all it is a zip file. That's really what it is. So now that I change it to a zip file, I could double click, and now you see some other folders inside an Excel file. Right? We have the XML file, we have some Excel reference, some doc properties, so on. So let's go to the Excel styling. So you know how in Excel, when you color a sheet, right? Maybe you highlight the header, make it color blue, and you want to make the text white, and you want to make the font bigger on a specific value, and you want to add formulas and all that stuff. So in order for all of that to be captured, really what's happening, all of those settings are being captured in the XML files, right? You have these worksheets. This is sheet 1. If you had sheet 2, that means that relates to sheet 2, sheet 3, blah blah, and so on, right? So if I open this up, keep in mind this is raw text here now that we're dealing with. So if I were to drag this, you know what? I can't, because I don't know why. Let me go back. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to unzip. So let's extract all. So now that I unzip that zip file, because it's a zip file, and we're going to go to worksheets, we got sheet 1. I'm going to drop this to text editor, and then we can see everything. Now you see everything that we have in here. And look at these values. These are the values that we actually had in Excel. And you could tell A1, B1, etc. Right? These are all different stuff that relates to that. Let's see. But nevertheless, so you could tell these are all the settings for every cell, values, etc. And if you had a sheet 2, or maybe another sheet called something else, you will see that in there as well. So let me move this out the way. So again, the main point I was trying to make here, and I know I'm going more detailed, and this is probably for another video, is Excel is not a text file. In reality, it's a compressed folder of many files. And that's why you cannot open it in a text editor. Now, if you change the extension, remove the .xls extension, and then replace it with a .zip, then you could unzip it the way I did, and then you'll see all the different folders. And obviously, there will be more if you have many tabs, many styling, and so on and so on. And on your worksheet, you have many files in here, right? One for every sheet. The list goes on, right? Your styling, your workbook. Obviously, if I bring my workbook over here, there'll be some information related to the workbook. In this case, the sheet 1, and so on, right? Just kind of different information that relates to the actual workbook overall. Like, again, you could tell, you may have like some, what does it say? The, version, last version. What else? I'm trying to think if the name is in here. I don't see the name. Pretty sure it's somewhere, but it's not. I don't see it in here. But either way, though, hopefully that gives you an idea, right, of what's kind of what's in there, like some of the stuff that is in here. And better yet, here's the actual some like the headers, right? This is the header value that we're looking at: learner, completion status. We actually got some values in here. So either way, guys, again, not gonna go too detailed in this, but kind of going down to Excel. Excel is really a zip file that contains many folders inside and files. And then ultimately, all of the files in there are XMLs. And the XML is what helps you style the sheets. You know, you have different XML files for different worksheets. Um, your formula that being stored in XML, and that's how you know when you open it up, it's able to read all of that and then generate, you know, the data in the right cell and apply the right format and styling and all that stuff. So that's pretty much what that's doing. So the next one that we're going to talk about is going to be Parquet. This file type is very, very popular when it comes to big data. When you're dealing with a lot of big data, it's very ideal to um, if you're going to be querying data, right? Like, I don't mean database, but you're going to be querying raw files. Parquet is the file you want to use, not CSV, not Excel, but you're going to be Parquet, especially when you're dealing with large amounts of data. Because then what happens is you could have, let's say, a folder with thousands of Parquet files in there, and ultimately now you could query off of that. And let's say each Parquet file has, you know, a data set of 1,000,000 rows each, as an example. Well, now you have 1,000 file. That's what, 1,000,000 plus 1,000. That's a hold on. Am I right? They say 1,000. Either way, that's what, 1,000,000,000 rows. But either way, that, you know, that's large data sets, right? And that's actually not. That's very common, right? There are a lot of businesses that deal with large data sets, and that's kind of what you're dealing with. And you need a solution that's cost effective, and this is where Parquet shines in that area. So obviously, let's kind of go to Parquet. I have a Parquet file that I could share, and let me go ahead and find it real quick. Let me see, where is it at? All right, here it goes. Let me go ahead and drop it in. Again, you could tell when we take a look at it, it looks all gibberish. Keep in mind, just like the Excel file, right? The Excel file that we had, it was a compressed file. This is a compressed file as well. It's being compressed. So when you look at it, it looks very, you know, doesn't, you know, you don't see nothing, man. Put it that way. It's not values. It's not anything of value. So what we're going to do is, well, how do you view the data? Obviously, you could read the data. You could use Panda to read it. You could other, you know, applications or so on. But nevertheless, there are some tools you could use. One of the tools is TAD Desktop. So here's one. It's a free application. You go ahead and use it. It's actually very lightweight, pretty fast. Again, it's free. So if you need to look at some Parquet files, this is very ideal for that. Obviously, it does work for CSV files as well and Parquet files. So, and oh yeah, I didn't know the SQLite files as well. Okay, so that's pretty cool. I wasn't aware of it reading those files as well. So what we're gonna do is I want to open up that application. Where is it? I just had it. And we're going to open up this file. Oops. So now, damn it, why is it? All right, there we go. What the? All right, cool. All right. So as you could tell now, when we open this up in a like Notepad text editor, it's gibberish, doesn't see nothing. But when we open it up in a viewer that allow us to read it, we can now see all the data, right? You could look at the data, you know what you're dealing with, and then ultimately this is what what's being stored. Again, it's sample data. None of this data is valid. It's sample dummy data. Nevertheless, so this is data that you could tell when you look at it. It looks like CSV data, right? You got rows of data, you got columns, you got your header, what the names of each column is. Obviously, it's not CSV data. I will make a video going into more details comparing the two, CSV and Parquet, because they're completely different data types. The way the data being structured in this file, it's completely different than a CSV file. And because the way it's being structured, it allows us to read like literally tens and tens of times faster than a traditional CSV file. So when it comes to reading it, right, whether it be Python, doesn't matter what programming language, but when it comes to, you're gonna be, reading these files and, for the purpose of, querying data from it, the query time, it's like literally, I don't know, maybe even 100 times faster than a CSV file. And that's where it becomes very beneficial, man. Because now you could have just files saved in a, let's say, S3 bucket or somewhere, right, in some kind of storage, and you could query off of it. You could just kind of programmatically access it, query off of it. This is where it becomes very beneficial. Just from a bigger scope, you have a data lake, and that data lake, ultimately, what you could do, you could be pulling from different resources. Like, for example, you could have your database that would have external table connections, where some of the database tables could be actual database tables, but others will be external tables that would be pulling from Parquet files, as an example, right? So the data doesn't actually live in the database. It's not stored in a table object or anything. It's actually querying directly from these Parquet files, as an example. And now you kind of blend the two together, right? You can have some actual table that have data, and then you can have some what's called external tables that are actually linked to these Parquet files. And now you could have, let's say, two tables, which from an end user standpoint, from a data mart standpoint, that's what it looks like, right? You got two tables, but in reality, when you query them, it's actually pulling data from a table, and it's actually pulling data from files, Parquet files, and then you join them to your queries, and everything just is very robust and very, very fast. So again, that's a whole different. That it's not that it's complex, but it is different. So I need to make a video, kind of go over that in more details, because it's very beneficial, for sure. But again, this is how you would view it, right? You could view it using a viewer, but ideally, this is the only way you can, unless you want to look at it by bringing it in, using some other method, right? Your programming language of choice, and then be able to spit it out in a data frame or something to be able to view it. But ideally, a viewer, the more ideal option, what I would recommend anyways. And then we have these other two data types here. So I'm actually going to compare two. I have two files to share for you. These are sample files, but they're the exact same data set, but one is in JSON and one is in XML. So let's go ahead and compare the two, right, to see the difference. So I gotta make this a bit smaller now. A little bit smaller. All right, cool. That'll work. Okay, so we take a look at these two. We have an XML on the left, JSON on the right. These are the exact same data sets. Keep that in mind. They're exactly the same. The only difference is one's XML, one's JSON. That's the only difference. If we compare the two, XML, pretty much, if you're familiar with HTML, it's pretty much looks the same, right? You got tags. tags is what separates the structure of your data set. So let me kind of format this. I don't like the way this is being formatted. And do I not have this installed? Damn it, I don't. Never mind. That's fine. I'm not going to deal with it now. But either way, we have, let me just kind of try to separate it out a little bit better. So if we take a look at it, see we have our glossary, right? So you could tell we got, so again, HTML, XML, you have tags, you know, so you have different, it's a different structure. In a JSON, you have key value pair. So you have your key and then you have your value. So in this case, we could tell our key value, this is our key, this is our key, the name of our key. And then we have another JSON object as the value. Okay. And then inside there, we have another key called title. And our value in this case, instead of being a JSON object, it's actually a string. And here's a string. And same thing with this. Now over here we have another key, and the value happens to be a JSON object again. And again, if we look inside here, we have a key, which is title, and the value is a string. So the example that we see here is value JSON object. A key, key, and then the value is a JSON object. The key, and it's a string. And then the key, and the value is another JSON object. The key, and then the value is the string. But let me show you another one though. Let's look at this. See how this one we have the key, and then in this case though, it's not a string and it's not a JSON object. It's actually a array, right? So again, your value could be a string. It could be a number, it could be a JSON object, it could be array, the list goes on, right? It could be different things. But again, this shows you how this is structured. So now if we look at the XML equivalent of that, let's kind of look over here. So let's find, so there it goes right here. Here's our tag. And inside this tag, again, we have another tag, and here's our value, right, between these two tags, right? So just like the way for JSON, we have our key, then we have our value. Well, my bad. We have key, and then we have our value. Well, over here, we have our tag, which is, again, the same as the key, and then we have our value. So then if we scroll down, we're going to see, well, now we have this. So the way we have it over here, we have our key, and then we have a array, right? Keep that in mind, of array, because it repeats itself. It's more than one. Well, look how it is in XML. We have our tag, then we have what's called a attribute, and then inside the tag there's an attribute, and then inside the attribute we have our value, which which is again the same attribute name but different values. Right, so that's the way it's kind of structured in this comparison. So at least let's give you an example. Those of you who kind of new, this is a good example of two same values, like same represents the same results. At the end of the day, just one happens to be formatted in an XML format, and the other one is JSON. Now I remember when I first got started. This is years back. I got more familiar with JSON first. And then when I started getting familiar with XML, I was like, dude, man, this seems like a pain in the you know what. Because, you know, by then I was so familiar with JSON. Like, dude, JSON seems so easy, man. Key value pair, right? I could just call my value from a key. Especially like Python. Python handles JSON very well. Like, you could easily take the JSON object, convert it to a dictionary in Python, and then you could easily just parse through it like nothing. Like, very, very easy, very swift. And then when I went to XML, like, damn, man, it's, you know, a little bit more, require a little more effort to parse. There's some packages in Python that you could use, obviously, but it just wasn't as straightforward as JSON. But I would say I've been dealing with XML a lot. There's a lot of projects that require dealing with XML because the API returns back an XML object, and that's what we're dealing with. And I'm at a point now where I'm actually very good with both. And probably still prefer JSON, but I have no issue with XML, man. I deal with that. That's not a problem. No, I know how to read it very well. I understand it very well. Not an issue at all. Obviously, one thing that I would recommend if you're dealing with XML data sets often, I would recommend get like an XML reader, one that allows that's very good to see how you can kind of like collapse some of these tags and so on. Well, this is a basic level. You get a decent XML reader, dude. It does way more advanced stuff that would come very, very beneficial, man, when you're exploring XML file. Especially this is a small. I deal with XML files sometimes that are literally 4 or 5,000 rows long, like massive, and it comes very handy to see it in a actual tool that's kind of more designed to view XMLs. So that's just something to what I would recommend anyways. So now let's get back to the final file, guys, EDI X12. So now we're going to be talking about EDI X12. This is the one that I feel a lot of people are not aware of unless you had a need to learn it. But in general, most people, even programmers, they do not know what EDI X12 is. Maybe never seen it, not familiar with it, nothing. So let's go ahead and touch bases and see what it is first. So I guess let me show you what it is first. Here I have a sample, and here we go. So we don't need this anymore. I'm going to close out of this. Close out of this. Let's expand this out. Cool. So this is right here is EDI X12. EDI X12, something to keep in mind, there's different versions of EDI X12. This is where it gets a little bit more, it gets a little bit complicated, but in reality, it's not when you really know it. It's one of those deals where when you don't know it, dude, it's very cryptic. But once you become familiar with it, it makes sense. It's actually not that hard to understand. So let me kind of go back. So the origins of this EDI X12 file type goes way back, dude. Like it goes years and years back. I mean, I want to say, I don't know if it's 50s, 60s or what, but it goes years back. It's a very old school file type that's been around for years. Now, it's very utilized. Even today, it's heavily utilized still for a lot of transmission of let's say events, orders, things of that nature. It's used heavily in logistics. It's used a lot in medical, like pharma, things of that nature. Good example would be you have McKesson, right? You're one of your big distributors in the medical field, healthcare field. When they get orders from maybe the pharmacy or whoever's doing the ordering from the distributor from the distribution, they would get a lot of the time they get the EDI orders, and it's pretty much the file that says, hey, we have this script, this is what we're ordering, or what, not script, my bad. They're ordering maybe like 100 of whatever drug and things of that nature. When they provide inventory snapshots, they will send an EDI file that would tell them, hey, this is all the inventory. So the EDI file will be massive because it has all the inventory levels on that file, but it'll be structured in this format. Instead of something that's more common like XML or JSON, it's not. It's this. And the reason why it's this is because these are standards. They're standard that relates to XML. EDI. That XML and JSON does not have. So a lot of these files, a lot of these EDI files, EDI X12, for example, you have different versions. Like this, here's the version right here of 410, where there's 5010, 4010, 5010, 6010. The more popular ones that I have seen based on projects that I have worked on, seems to be 40-10, and then I will say next would be 50-10. I haven't really seen none with 60-10. Pretty sure there's some out there, but I have not dealt with any per se. I have not dealt with any that are below 40-10, like 30-10 or 20-10 or etc. And that's because those are even older versions. Most people are using one of the two versions, 40-10, 50-10, to my experience. Those are like the two main ones that I see a lot. And then inside here, you have what did this file represent? So see where it says 850? 850 means order. And if you're dealing with inventory data, it's 846. So you have these codes that represent, that lets you or lets your application know what kind of file you're dealing with, right? Are you dealing with an order file? Are you dealing with a inventory file? Are you dealing with order fulfillment file? Are you dealing with an acknowledgement file, right? The list goes on, a different kind of file that you deal with. Are you dealing with like a status file? There's codes for each type of activity. So obviously that's where the standardization comes in. If you know what code it is, you know what file, what it represents. Represents a new order, represents inventory, represents something. And this is where it kind of helps keep some standard. And if you have standards, it becomes a lot easier when now you're going to integrate with other trade partners. You already have a standard, and the standard could be like, hey, our standard is EDI X12 version 4010, and it's a 850 order, file. Just telling that alone, they could just go off the general specs of what EDI is, and by doing that, they could just know what you're dealing with in general. Now, there in general though, there's a little bit more to that. A lot of the time, there's what's called EDI specs, and let me try to pull up an example, right? So let's just kind of do EDI specs. So let's try to find the EDI specs for let me see which company. I'm trying to find if there's. Let's do EDI specification. There it goes. Here's one. So here's this company's EDI specs, right? Already off the top, it's a 410. And then it tells us what it is, 856. 856, it's advanced shipping notification. Um, this is order fulfillment, right? When you ship an order, you gotta give them a notice of what's being shipped, and normally you include tracking information and stuff like that in here. And then this is where it gives you all the specs. A lot of this stuff in general is all standard, but there's a few things, and this is where most providers provide a EDI spec documentation, because there's a few nuances that you don't really know unless they tell you, right? You could guess in some cases, but a lot of the times you do need them to tell you. Um, like for example, let me try to find something um, that maybe makes sense. Like a lot of the stuff that seeing here is pretty standard. Like you have P for production, T for test. Again, that's all standard. You specify that in the file to let them know, like, hey, this is a test file, this is a production file, right? So that's pretty easy. But some of the stuff that becomes a little bit more, unless the specs tell you, you really don't always know. Like a lot of this stuff here is standard. This is standard, right? The like 0005 original replacement, that's all standard. So if you see it, it's not, you know that, hey, if it's 00, this is the original order. If it's a 05, this is a replacement order fulfillment type, pretty much. But again, there's some things that are not as straightforward that you do need them to provide. I'm trying to see how there's one. Again, a lot of this is standard. Um, this actually has everything pretty standard based on what I could tell. Um, like again, all of this is standard. kg for kilograms, lb for pounds. Um, So here's a good example of one reference. So reference, there's many different references that you could provide. You could provide, again, in this case is a bill of lading, but maybe it's tracking number, right? That's a different type of code. But in this case, they're telling you, all right, we want the reference of bill of lading. So it'd be this is where the spec would tell you what they want. So that's where in your mapping you would map to make sure that, all right, we're gonna have this reference code be BM, and we're gonna make sure to map our our bill of lading to this reference O2 field, and that's how it would kind of represent in the XML, not XML, in the EDI X12. And if we take a look at it, just kind of show you a little bit of comparison of it. See how it's kind of hard to tell, but see how we have these like ref 01, ref 02, right? Reference. Let me go up TD5. I have TD5 right here. So we have TD5, and then we have TD501. 01 means it's the first value. So see how you got this special character, the star, and then that's the separator. So we have our segment. Segment is TD5. And then in between these two stars, we have our first value, which is again 01, which represents routing sequence code. And so this sample is blank, but sometimes they may need to be something, right? Some kind of code, which in this case is a B. Keep in mind, EDI is very code, man. That's what I say, very cryptic. So unless you know how to read EDI, or at least know how to read the specs documentation, or just familiar with EDI structure, you're not going to know what the hell none of this means, right? Like if you look at this, most likely you're not going to know, well, what is BG? What is 00? I don't know what 00 is. What is DS? I don't know. Again, it's very code, very cryptic. But when you know how to read specs, you could easily let's go to BG. Let's see what is BG, right? BG toward the beginning. My bad, it's not going to be in here, but ultimately it's the beginning segment. In this case, it's different because different files have different segments, values. In this case, it's called BG, and it's A50. And then you have same thing as this one, right? 00, 00 for original, and then you have your value 2 could be something else. In this case, it's DS. And then of course you could have your whatever value. Then this is blank, and then you have your date type deal. So but again, this data type, just want to show you, this is another file type, very popular. It's used a lot in logistics, healthcare, a lot of I'm mentioning those two because that's my background, where I do a lot of my work is in healthcare, is in logistics, warehousing, freight forwarding, things of that nature, import exports. Again, healthcare, dealing with pharmacy data, distributor data. A lot of it's EDI that they share. A lot of it's not EDI too. Some of it is not. But nevertheless, the stuff that is, especially with the big provider, McKesson and so forth, you're dealing with the EDI files that they're providing. When they're going to give you inventory information, it's in the form of an EDI file, and this is how it looks. And it will be massive depending on how much product inventory you had. And ideally, you need some kind of tool to parse all of this out. This data, you could tell, it's not something you could open up in Excel and parse out. You could program to parse it, and I have done that before. And I'll tell you right now, it's a pain in the ass to do. But most likely, EDI files, you use some kind of mapping tool. And I will tell you right now, because this is a very old school file type, and it's been around for years, and all the industry standard uses it a lot. Like Amazon uses it as well for Vendor Central. For Seller Central, they use the RESTful API, and I believe it's a JSON object. But for Vendor Central, Amazon, they use EDI X12 to communicate, because you're dealing, in this case, Vendor Central, dealing with a lot of the times bigger companies that they're selling product on their platform, and that's what they use. They use EDI X12 to do a lot of the stuff. Hey, sorry I joined just now. Are there any video that I need to watch before this one? I mean, it's up to you, man. I don't have any new ones yet. I do have some that I'm gonna be working on. So there'll be some new videos coming out. But in this stream, really we just been talking about a few topics. Right now we're just talking about different files. Kind of explaining to everybody CSV files, Excel files, Parquet files, JSON, XML, and then EDI X12. EDI X12, the last file, which is the one that I'm showing right now. Again, very cryptic looking file. It's very one of those files that's um, it could be hard initially, but once you really understand how EDI files work and how the structure is, it actually makes a lot of sense. But it's one of the files that most people don't really experiment with or experience with unless you work in the industry, unless you're part of the mapping team where you're dealing with data transmissions from a vendor that's dealing with EDI X12, but it's very used globally, like a lot. Um, it's a very again, it's one of those files that's um, it's been around for years, guys, years. I remember when I first got my hand on EDI X12, like, dude, who deals with this file, man? It's a pain in the butt. It's like very hard to try to parse using Python or any other language, the way it is, and because it's just the structure of it. And then you have little nuances and stuff like that. But it's one of those deals that have been around for years. And then what I've seen to my own experiences, you have companies that now build these tools, these mapping tools that are old school, have been around for years. They're nothing special. And they're like, but nevertheless, they get the job done, that they're able to extract this data very easily and then either load it to a database or maybe convert it to XML or whatever it may be. And these tools are not cheap. They're expensive. Like BizTalk is one of them. Dude, I remember when I looked into that, I think it would cost me a few $1,000s per year to be able to get that license per year. So, and then there's other cheaper tools, but it's still expensive, man. Like I use a MapForce, and I think I'm paying what am I paying for that, man? Like $1,800 maybe a year to be able to do that. So again, it's not cheap, but again, it's part of doing business, obviously, because I need to I process a lot of EDI files for my clients. So I need it for that purpose, but it's not cheap, man. But again, I think it's one of those deals where the only people that are using it is people that are in business, that are again doing integration with their trade partners, like Walmart, Target, Wayfair, Amazon, so on. So the idea is, well, hey, you could afford to pay a few $1,000s a year for this software because hey, you're in business, you're making money, so it's part of doing business. Anybody that's doing their own project obviously will not use this or not generating any transmission of integration with this data type because it doesn't make sense, man. It's very dumb if they did. So, man, all right, guys. So we're pretty much at the end of the stream, guys. Man, again, man, I do appreciate y'all guys for joining the stream. I do appreciate all the support and love I've been getting on my channel, man. The channel is growing slowly but surely, but it's growing, so I appreciate it. I do have some videos I need to work on that I'm going to be pushing out, so hopefully that should be coming out soon. Again, guys, follow me on Twitch and on Kick. I stream on Twitch, Kick every Friday and Sunday nights, so I'll be on there tomorrow. Again, remember, I am going to be having a giveaway on Twitch when MW3 comes out November 10th. So I'm going to be giving away a copy of that game. So if you're a gamer, you're into COD, I'm going to be giving away a copy of MW3 on my Twitch channel on November 10th. Also here on my YouTube channel, guys, once we hit 10K subscribers, I am going to be giving away a Mac Studio, man. So keep that in mind. 10K, if you're a subscriber, you're going to have an opportunity to join this giveaway. And I am going to be giving away a Mac Studio, man, on this channel. So again, just kind of my way to show appreciation for y'all guys for following me, showing support, and I appreciate it, man. Where are you from? So I'm located in Fort Worth, Texas, which is in the U.S. So that's where I'm from. Anybody who's wondering, I'm in the Fort Worth, Texas, in the U.S. Right. So that's my location. So I'm Central Time right now. My time is 11:16 p.m. So it's already nighttime for me. It's 11:16 p.m. my time. All right, guys, man. We're pretty much at the end of the stream. Again, I appreciate it. Y'all have a rest of a good week. If I don't see y'all, and again, I'll be on next week again on Thursday. And follow me on Twitch and Kick if you can. I'll be on Twitch tomorrow around 10 p.m. Y'all take care, guys.